Hare Krishna. Continuing in the 13th chapter, which is called Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. Now, we spoke about knowledge. Krishna pointed out that to know this body and the knower of the body is called knowledge. But Krishna now elaborates a little further as to what he considers to be knowledge. And if you remember, I left off by showing how the Bhagavad Gita's concept of knowledge is so much different than what we consider to be knowledge nowadays. Technological knowledge, education in grade school, high school, university, PhD, and so on, whatever it may be. It may be physics, mathematics, and so on. But that knowledge, if it isn't based on understanding who we are and what is the real purpose of all of that knowledge, where is it taking us? Is it knowledge for the sake of knowledge? Is knowledge simply to satisfy the senses of this body? Unfortunately, sadly, the answer is yes. Overall, knowledge does not have any ultimate goal or any real spiritual goal. But in Bhagavad Gita, the goal of knowledge is clearly pointed out in the 15th chapter, and the goal of knowledge is self-realization. The goal of knowledge is to know what our relationship is with the Supreme. This is where knowledge is meant to take us. And if knowledge takes us in a different direction, or the acquisition of certain arts, skills, and so on, and we label these as knowledge, but in the eyes of Bhagavad Gita, in Krishna's eyes, they're not real knowledge. Now, let me list a more detailed description of what Krishna considers to be knowledge. And listen to this. This is in the 8th to the 12th. This is 4 verses. This is from the 8th to the 12th verse, and 5 verses, and beautiful Sanskrit. Amanitvam madambitvam ahimsak shanti rajavam acharyopasamam socham stairam atva nigrigraha indiyarteshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshanudarshanam asaktir anavisanga putra dara grihadishu nityam cha samachitatvam ishta nishtopapatishu Mai chanyana yogena bhakti ravyabhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam arati jana samsiddhi Adyatma jnana nityatvam tatta jnanartha darshanam etad jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yad atonyataham. As you can expect, this is going to be a bit of a lengthy translation. Now, Krishna lists what he says constitutes knowledge, and these are different aspects of knowledge. Starting off with humility. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. That means living with children, wife, home, and the rest, but knowing that there's more to life and not being entangled by them. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, which means detachment, at least in terms of my dependence. I'm not dependent on them, but rather I may be living and working amongst them for practical purposes, but that's all. Let's continue. Accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. I could go on for quite a while on this one, but it begins with humility, because humility and the acquisition of humility, the cultivation of humility, is the primary principle for acquiring knowledge, that I don't know anything, and therefore I submit myself to a higher authority. In this case, the higher authority is the Bhagavad Gita. So some of these are very self-evident. They don't require elaboration. I spoke on a few of them as I was listing. So humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. This is knowledge. You have to know that, yes, if I want to acquire spiritual knowledge, real knowledge, I have to approach a spiritual master. Just like you don't become an engineer just by reading books, you have to have teachers. Similarly, to understand what's inside the books, one needs a teacher. Cleanliness, steadiness. Well, who learns cleanliness? And of course, standards of cleanliness. Well, standards of cleanliness, for instance, that we teach here in our ashram, and the standards from the outside world are very, very different, such as bathing 2 to 3 times a day, part of our practices. Steadiness. Steadiness means that one is not disturbed by the coming and going of events. Self-control, control your mind and senses. Renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. In other words, one gives up those things that are not favorable for self-realization. Absence of false ego. In order to be free from false ego, you have to have right ego, which means you have to know who you are. And living with this vision, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, disease. This is what the world is about. And this is the glasses that we have to see the world through, is that, and expect that this is taking place. Therefore, we shouldn't be surprised by death, old age, disease. These things come. And then the next is birth. We want to avoid another birth, and self-realization means to avoid another birth by actually attaining the supreme. Detachment, as I said, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and rest. Freedom from entanglement. You don't have to be freed from them, but husband, wife, children, not be entangled, realizing here are people with whom karma has brought me together. I have a certain responsibility to them, but ultimately all I can do is offer them, and this is what I should be doing, offer them the path of self-realization, but my primary duty is to save myself. And that's one person that we can oblige to do what we want. Everyone else, we can just make suggestions, and the rest then is up to them. Even-mindedness amongst pleasant and unpleasant events. There are going to be unpleasant events, but one remains even-minded because he's fixed. Yes, birth, death, old age, disease. This is what the world is about. I need to be steady, fixed. And how is that fixed situation coming about? By chanting Hare Krishna, by being fixed in the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, seeing through the eyes of Bhagavad Gita. Constant and unalloyed devotion, meaning being engaged in bhakti yoga. And then aspiring to live in a solitary place, meaning that one should be able to detach oneself, even when one's living in the city, at least at certain times of day, and I've spoken about this, early in the morning, I should be doing my spiritual practice, my sadhana, my chanting, my meditation, my reading. This is aspiring to live in a solitary place. Detachment from the general mass of people I spoke about. We're detached from them. We live with them, but that isn't what my life is all about. It's not about all the entertainment and the social interaction that's going on. My life is about self-realization, which generally the general mass of people are not interested in. And accepting the importance of self-realization and the philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and everything else is ignorance. So this is Krishna's own words. Besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. This is what knowledge is. Now, if we're talking about practicing Bhakti Yoga, these are the qualities that we need to cultivate, learn them. That's called knowledge.